first words they spoke were uttered by their attires. Silence broken by the sound their shoes made, the click versus the pat. The Sandover tribe or idol over the Oxford of a suited diplomat. Their dressing spoke volumes before they did. It consumed the mood of the waiting room they sat in. Comfy seats and curtains of satin, they spent this time around each other like the rings of Saturn. As they awaited for their flights and to sit in a plane's cabin, two men sat in this waiting room. One was the tribal chief. The other was the clean-shaven diplomat, the globalized aristocrat. Both children of this soil that has been exploited. One emerged from loins that were royal, the other was appointed. And the chief cleared the mist of quietness to inquire on the destination of a diplomat representing our fine nation. He was off to cross seas with an empty bag and would return with a sack filled with solutions for Africa in hand. He'd attend summits, organized by people placed prejudiciously on summits of mountains looking over the world as their puzzle, putting pieces in place with peace instated to guide us on this journey of problem solving, revolving around issues involving the rest of us. And the chief's expression contorted from inquiry to irony as he asked the diplomat a question that grabbed his attention. Have you ever been afraid in a dark corner with someone who called themselves your hero? Someone who boasted of their feats that would shrink your perception of yourself, a self-proclaimed savior, who spoke of how your methods are weak and belittled their worth, a hero, who boasted about how he has beaten beasts that would sink their teeth in you if you did not have his help. Imagine shivering and shaking in a corner because you were cornered by a ferocious lion, a hulk of a beast, and it foams at the mere sight of you. Yet you still have this hero earn your trust from you. And he barks at the monster. He tries to throw stones at it and tries to intimidate it because it worked on his last kill. He yells at the beast because it worked last time he was in the field. Yet the beast still crawls and marches on its paws, seeking to have you and your hero in between its jaws. Yet this very time, this entire time, you have in your hands the very thing that would keep you from a casket as you wield your grandfather's musket. A weapon passed down as an heirloom, and he prepared you to use it when things come down to the wire. Yet your hero looks to you and says, "Oh, your gun cannot fire." He says, "How possibly could your old-fashioned instrument beat my experience? My methods and means have created machines, beaten beasts, made men retreat." And you think, "I can't do it again." For this hero thought that all beasts are the same, and he looks down upon how you, Mr. Diplomat, have been trained. This was the monologue of a tribal chief whose bladed tongue was unsheathed to swipe and swing at the concrete that towers around our identity and beliefs. He spoke with a globalized aristocrat, a technocrat, if you will, a clean-shaven, well-dressed diplomat, and the chief simply asked, "Oh, Mr. Diplomat, have you been to a museum, Mr. Diplomat?" "But of course I've been to a museum. I've been to many across the world, in fact." "Oh, Mr. Diplomat, but have you been to a museum in your own land, Mr. Diplomat? Or have you been so fascinated by the Louvre in lieu of the space your own people grew and constructed, despite its very concept being a Western construct?" "But of course I've been to a museum in my own land," quenching the chief's inquisitive demands. But the chief still asked, "Oh, Mr. Diplomat, but how many summits have you attended with your ancestors also in attendance? I mean, who passed the decree to box our past and leave it in the past as mere opinion, when in contrast the West grew from learning from their history with style and elegance, a complete flip from the Dark Ages to the days of the Renaissance? I mean, oral tradition has been looked at as unreliable, but it's undeniable that it keeps our people alive. I mean, how could we possibly have fallen for any tricks had we kept our knowledge on our lips instead of stashed away in pages we never flip? Oh, Mr. Diplomat, the very sound of our shoes differs because you and I, we walk differently. How could you possibly imagine a skip or a trip by an African equipped with the values of his identity?" Mr. Diplomat, when did we begin to occupy the seat of student in the world when we have so much to teach? We have occupied this seat or chair of sorts for so long that it has an imprint of our buttocks. I mean, who pinned our arms to our torsos and clamped them to our bodies that we can't even stand? Who told us that asking to go to the bathroom was the only reason we could raise our hand? I mean, when did we begin to shake in our boots when we spoke of the land of our roots? When did it become apparent that your success was directly proportional to your association with the West? It was when you thought your grandfather's musket could never fire. It was when we preferred the stones that would probably know a fox in Europe but could never shake a lion in our backyard. It was when we placed in a treasure trove our own ideas and methods, our philosophies and beliefs in a concrete box, and we called it a museum. Mr. Diplomat, must I walk these streets in dashiki sheets or Ankara clothing in response to the loathing to the cap placed on my head? This cap, crown, hat, helmet, all met with the idea that this entire world rushes to one tailor. You and I, Mr. Diplomat, we tuck in our shirts, we tighten our ties, we maintain our headgear, and we can never let it fall. For this entire world rushes to one tailor. They make one suit, and it fits all. It doesn't matter if your belly is sticking out and shooting out buttons. It doesn't matter if your sleeves are hanging. It doesn't matter if your jacket can double as a blanket. We just look at this tailor and we thank it. The diplomat was tired and beat by the words the chief chose to speak. It was only the announcement of the chief's flight that he cut his monologue and dropped the proverbial mic. The chief only hoped that the diplomat heard every word that he had to say, and that he would go off to his summit. He would go off to his summit with a full bag and would return with a sack filled with stories about how the world reacted to Africa's plans based on the things that happened on its own land. So the chief looks to you now, and he knows you see him. Oh, Africa, are you ready to solve your own problems and be a walking museum?